So, with Hashem's help, thank you so much for joining us to learn with us Rabbi Nachman's wisdom, Sichos HaRan, on this very beautiful Rosh Chodesh Kislev, the week of Parshas Vayetze. And Be'ezras Hashem, with Hashem's help, we jump back into our journey, our class trip with Rabbi Nachman, sitting on the wagon with him as he regales us with his sometimes random seeming and eclectic collection of teachings, of wisdom. What a privilege to be connected to this tzaddik, to be learning the Sefer together. So, without further ado, I will share my screen. And let's jump into it, Be'ezras Hashem. Okay, so we take a look at Sichos HaRan 107 today. And as per usual, we've I think it still demands us and requires us to be pretty surprised at the consistency with which this occurs to us in our Chabura. This is a pretty wild thing, but we again and again seem to encounter great synchronicity with what we're up to in terms of our learning and what's going on in the world, what's going on in the Jewish calendar, in the Jewish year. And this piece is no different. Over here we're taking a look at teaching Kuf Zayin 107. And over here, of course, Rabbi Nachman is going to be quoting a pasuk from this very week's parsha, right? This is just, par for the course for us. It's the Siyata D'Shmaya is wild. So even before I looked inside to see where we were up to prepare the shiur, it was just like, okay, I was thinking maybe it's going to connect to Chanukah or something. I look inside and it's a piece about Rachel. It's just tremendous. Okay, so let's jump into it. Ashreinu ma tov chalkeinu. It's a kiss from Hashem. It means that we're on the right path. So the tzaddik says, Esther beinanis haisa. Esther was a beinanis. The Gemara tells us, Le'aruka v'le'katzara, describing her beauty. She was beinanis, right? She wasn't too big, wasn't too small. Beinanis. Le'aruka v'le'katzara. So the Rebbe says, okay, on the one hand, you're telling us about Esther's physical beauty, proportionality, but of course it must be saying something deeper to us. Obviously there has to be an inner dimension to what's being expressed over here. So what does it mean that Esther is a beinanis? So the tzaddik says, Esther beinanis hoisa, what this means is, ha'inin sham rabbi seinu zal, Chazal say, that b'shvil tznius shahoisa berachel, in that very Gemara, the Gemara tells us that it was because of the tznius, the special tznius that Rachel had, the modesty, that zachsa v'yatsa mimena Shaul, from her came the great king Shaul. Now, ubeshvil tznius shahaisa b'Shaul, because of the special tznius that Shaul had, zacha v'yatsa mimenu Esther Hamalka. From her came Esther Hamalka. So Esther, spiritually speaking, was very much a conjugation of these two ancestral sources, right? From Rachel and from Shaul. Shaul comes from Rachel, Esther comes from Shaul, and both Shaul and Rachel had the midah of tznius, had the midah of modesty. And from that, Esther comes into the world. Says the Rebbe, okay, so go back to what the initial source is. If you're telling me that Esther is a beinanis, lo yaruka, not too big, v'loi katzara, not too small, says the Rebbe, again, this is just an interesting thing. What are we supposed to take from this? I don't know, tznius, that we should work on our modesty. We should work on being people that are attracting attention, not to ourselves, but to Hashem. And always pointing the way, up, look at Hashem, not at any of us, not physically, not spiritually. Okay, but the Rebbe just says this interesting thing. He says, well, take a look at what it says about Rachel, take a look at what it says about Shaul. Uva Rachel ksiv, about Rachel the pasuk says, Rachel bitcha haketana. Rachel is called Lavan's younger daughter, Rachel bitcha haketana, that Yaakov worked for the little Rachel. Rachel is called small. Uva Shaul nemar, but about Shaul it says, Mishichva v'malak avoya mikol ha'am. Now Shaul was bigger than anybody else. He was the largest in the whole nation. Says the Rebbe, that's the deeper dimension of what it means, that Esther was a beinanis, she wasn't too big, she wasn't too small, is essentially letting us know that in Rachel's merit was not born Esther. In Rachel, who was too small, right? Rachel is katana, from her came Shaul. But in Shaul's merit, that also wouldn't have been enough to bring Esther into the world, because it was only through Rachel that Shaul came into the world. And so Shaul is too big, right? Shaul is big, Rachel is small. Esther is just right. Right? What's that story? It's reminded me of maybe Goldilocks. Is that who it is? Or one bed is too big, others is too small. It's just the perfect bed, right? The perfect chair, right? So a lot of depth in that story. So this is an incredible thing. Says the Rebbe, there's a Penimiyus to the Gemara that tells you that Esther was Beinanis le'arucha v'le'ketzara. Says the Rebbe, look closely at that very page in the Gemara, which tells you that Esther did not come from Rachel alone or from Shaul alone, but the combination of the two. Once we understand that Rachel is ketzara, she's small, because the pasuk says Rachel bitchat katana, and you understand that Shaul is big, so then that's what it means that Esther was Beinanis, because Esther was a product of them both. Le'aruka, which means not from Shaul alone, who is Arucha, was too big, but Le'ketzara, and not from Rachel alone, who is too small, somewhere in the middle. And this was the dual humility of both Rachel and Shaul. The Esther memutza bein Shaul v'Rachel, right? So Esther comes from the middle of both of them. We're going to have a problem here with the PDF. 1 second. I'm just going to X this out and open it again. 1 second. Sorry. Let's try this again. So while this is loading, so if we have to think of, okay, so what does it mean for us, right? So what does that mean? So I would say the following. I would say that a lot of people make a mistake with anivos. A lot of people think that anivos just means don't be too big. Right? Don't be too bold, forthcoming. Be quiet. Be quiet. Be small. That people shouldn't see you and people shouldn't hear you, and essentially, limit yourself and your capacities. People think that this is what anivos is. I would say that this is called an anivos of kitzara. It's not proper humility. Because Hashem doesn't intend for a person to be so humble that they never do anything in this world. Hashem put you in the world to do something, not to hide away. Hashem put each of us in the world to find a way to utilize our own unique capacities, which are God-given, which are literally a manifestation of Hashem's energy in the world, for the purpose of further bringing spirituality and emunah to the world. So it can't be, I don't know why it's doing this, it can't be too small, right? Too ktsara. Now, obviously, in order for it to be proper humility, lo yarucha, it can't be too big either, right? That's not humility. If a person is so self-oriented, where they're so proud of what they're able to do and they're capable, and it becomes about them, that's called arucha. That's called too big. So it's almost as if Rabbi Nachman is telling us, you want to know what Esther is. That Esther is the perfect example of someone who is very humble. Her very name connotes concealment. Haster, aster, the Gemara says. That's the root of Esther in the Torah. Means to cover over, to conceal. But you remember, when it came time to stand up for her people, like Mordechai told her, Mi yodeh im le'es kazois igat lamalchus. Who knows, if you didn't get into this position for now, you got to stand up. Imagine if she would have said, who am I? What am I? Remember when Moshe tried that, Hashem wasn't so happy with him. Moshe's humility was legendary. But if HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls upon you to do something, then do it. It's not a time to say, oh, who am I? What do you mean, who am I? HaKadosh Baruch Hu believes in you, so do it. It's not you. It's not for you. Meaning to say, you're right, you can't do it, but Hashem could do it, and Hashem is going to be working through you. And so, how beautiful that when we're speaking about Esther, who's the paradigm of holy humility, humility as it's supposed to be, right? The way that humility is supposed to be. So we say, beinanis. That's what humility is. Not too big, but not either too small. Lo yaruka v'lo ketzara. Maybe that's some kind of more practical teaching that we're able to extract from this particular Sichos HaRan, Kuf Zayin, and again, a reference to Rachel, this week's Parsha. Unbelievable synchronicity, because again, we don't plan when there's a shiur. Sometimes I'm traveling, sometimes I'm not able, and it just falls out this way. And almost every time that we come to a Yontiv or we come to a Parsha, we have to, someone will someday go through the whole series, and I hope that they'll make a mark of every time this happened, because it's statistically improbable. I won't say impossible, but it is very improbable without Siyata Dishmai that this would keep on happening. It's tremendous. Ashreinu. Okay, let's take a look at the next teaching. This is very important. Very, very, very. It's all important, but this is really important. Says the Rebbe, Schusa Yagan Aleinu. Yaduat's known, Shalim and Hazar Mesugam Ma'oid Ma'oid. Learning the Sefer Hazar HaKadosh, the teachings of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his Chavraya, and the teachings that they channeled down, that were written in manuscripts and much later on in history collected and edited and published. The Sefer HaZayar as we have it today, Rai Mehemna, all the different parts of the Sefer HaZayar, Safra Ditzniusa, the Tikkunim and so on, Zayar Chadash, the whole Zayar is Mesuga Ma'ayid Ma'ayid. It's to learn the Zayar is a huge segula. A huge segula. And we're going to see from the Chidah in a minute, even if you do not understand. And I think maybe, sometimes we try to find the smichos, or the connection between two pieces in Sichos Ram, which appear very disparate, each one sort of treating its own subject and then carrying on to something else. Maybe this follows what we just learned. Because a lot of people say, I should learn the Zohar Kaddish. I hardly have time for Shnai Mikabecha Targum, and I should sit down with the Zohar. It's for Kabbalists, it's for people who have to be 180 years old or whatever, and so who am I? I have to grow a beard and everything. So according to the tzaddikim who are telling us, no, everyone's got to learn Zohar Kaddish. Everyone has to have a connection to Zohar. So then it would fall under the rubric of Loy Arucha. You're not going to be a big Mekubal now because you opened the Zohar and read a few Aramaic words. You don't know what it means. But Loy Katsara. Don't sell yourself short. If the tzaddikim are revealing to us that it's a skula and an inyan to find a couple of minutes to just say the words of the Zohar Kaddish as much as you could understand, Loy Katsara. That's what it means. Don't sell yourself short. Anivus, baininess, right? It's always this delicate balance, like the Katzker, the Pshisker. In one pocket, you have Anoichi Afar Ve'efer. In the other pocket, you have Bishvili Nivra Olam. It's got to always be a synthesis, a balance. So the Rebbe says, Veda, and this is also crucial, because a lot of people are worried, if you learn Kabbalah, then you're not going to want to learn anything else. And you find that it's not this way. You find that when a person studies Chassidus in a real way, they have more cheshek to learn Chumash Rashi. They have more cheshek to learn Gemara. Now their level of priority might be slightly different. Their derech halimud might change. Their allocation of their time might broaden. That's true. But their cheshek, says Rabbi Nachman, a person should know shal yedei liman hazayar nasa cheshek lechol mini limudam shel haTorah kadosha. You're going to have more cheshek, desire to learn all the layers of Torah. It's not mutually exclusive. Because the whole light of the Zohar Kaddish is the light of Chachma. It's the all-encompassing light. It's the light of Emunah. It's the innermost spirit that suffuses and infuses all of the other parts and aspects and facets of our tradition, whether it's in Torah, whether it's in Tefillah, whether it's in mitzvahs, ma'asim tovim, asur meira, asay tov, mitzvahs hasay, mitzvahs loisay. It's the innermost soul. That's nishmasa de'oraisa. It's the soul of this thing called the Torah. And it impacts everything. It impacts everything. So the more a person, on the contrary, the more a person is disconnected from the Zohar and from this kind of perspective, then they're more likely to become partmental in their Torah study. Then they'll say, no, only Gemara and not Kabbalah. But to the degree that a person has the Chassidic or the Kabbalistic or the Penimiyus HaTorah oriented mindset, on the contrary, it's the light of everything. It's not the light of this or that. That's Bina. And that's a nigla. It's the light of this and that. That's chachma, right? It's all inclusive. So on the contrary, a person who's really onboarding and bringing this consciousness into their minds and hearts to the extent that they can, they're going to want to learn everything. They're going to want to learn everything. I happen to be writing now. I haven't spoken about it publicly, but I just mentioned it. I'm a bit worried about the HaRan and everything because it's like the most important thing that I've ever written. And I'm really davening to Hashem that I should be able to find the time to really do it, and it should be smooth and an easy process. But I'm writing a sefer now in English, which really sort of presents the whole hashkafa of Penimiyus from my humble perspective that I've been really teaching in all of my shiurim and all the books over the years, but to present it in a very, very clear system, step by step, idea by idea, just really stripping it down to the basic framework to enable people to understand where we're at in history, what needs to change, what's been changing, how to understand the importance of Chassidus, Kabbalah, specifically at this time in history, what Mashiach is, where all of history's been heading, etc., etc. How to understand many different facets of what's going on with technology, with mental health, with Am Yisrael's place amidst the Umas HaOlam, and really like sort of an all-encompassing, at least from my perspective, just to put down the whole hashkafa in very, very clear, systematic terms. I've been working hard on it. Baruch Hashem, I'm almost up to 100 pages already, so it made a good start. But there's way, 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 way more that needs to be written. Way more that needs to be written. And I'm also happen to be, Baruch Hashem, it's sort of a collaborative effort. I'm giving over the material as I sort of write it to a very special private chabura of educators here locally in London on Matzah Shabbosim, who are representative of 10 different organizations, about 20 educators, whether they can come in person to listen to the recordings, who are representing 10 different institutions across the spectrum and just inhaling the hashkafa of Chassidus, and it's life-changing. It's absolutely revelatory, life-changing. And as we work through it together, they're asking questions, and I'm incorporating those into the book itself. So bless me, bless me, bless me. Put it in your tefillas. This is something I think the world could use. I think it could help some people and bring Hashem's light to the world, which is my only intention. So Be'ezras Hashem, something to look forward to. So why am I mentioning that? Because in chapter 2, I go through all of the not all of the sources, all of them, but many, many, many very fundamental sources that clarify the permissibility and the obligation of each soul in the Jewish nation to be connected to this realm of Penimiyus HaTorah in their limud. And we go through, first of all, what was the ban? Was there a ban? What was that until age 40? What did that cover? What did that not cover? What did it never intend to say that now people can't learn? What was that? And then more importantly, we're going to learn sources that make it absolutely clear. Again, I'm not giving it all away. You're going to read it, Be'ezras Hashem, one day. Hopefully, if you so choose, if you're interested in this. So it's all there. It'll be there in the book. But the tzaddikim make it clear that after the year 1840, or really the century of 1740 to 1840, there was a cataclysmic shift with regard to this area of Limud Torah, and from that point on, it became absolutely mutter, no matter even what was withheld from people according to some opinions, not all, but according to some very prevailing halachic authorities, that you had to be 40, there were certain conditions. After 1840, it's not a question of conditions, it's a question of oxygen. You have to stay alive, and to stay alive in the choshech kaful u'mekupal, this darkness, you need the greatest light. It's not a question. It's not, but people aren't aware of the hashkafas, and people just, heard from their Rebbe, who heard from their Rebbe, who heard from their Rebbe, and that becomes a Masorah. It's not a Masorah. It's just ignorance. You can't call ignorance a Masorah, unless you want to have a Masorah of just not knowing. But hopefully we can educate, and we can go back to the sources. We can see what this thing was, what this thing is, what this thing isn't, and it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible to see. It's breathtaking. And you realize, oh my gosh, I really do need to learn Penimiyus. So all of you know that, because all of you are learning Penimiyus. You're here, we're learning the teachings of the Rebbe, so it's oxygen. But imagine, how many people are on the Zoom? 12 people. How many people will listen to it? 200, 300? How many people, there are tens of thousands of Jews. Not that they have to be listening to my shiur. I don't care whose shiur they listen to. But there are tens or hundreds of thousands of Jews whose souls are thirsty like anything. They're thirsty, they're parched. And Hashem gave us everything we need. Hashem gave us everything we need. So we have to open our hearts to it. We mamash have to open our hearts to it. So that's the teaching over here. The Rebbe is telling us about the Zohar Kadosh. So he says, "V'dash al yedei limud haZohar nasa cheshek l'chol minei limudim shel Atar Kadosh." You're gonna have yearning for all areas of Torah with this cheshek that comes from really being exposed, as we're going to see from the Chidah in a minute, exposed to the inner light of the Torah. It brings everything to life. Everything to life. Rabbi Nachman continues, "V'halashon hakadosh shel haZohar," and the holy lashon, the holy language of the Zohar, it really can inspire you. Just reading the simple ways that these tzaddikim spoke about Yiddishkeit, the gravity with which they approached psukim, with which they approached revelations, with which they approached the secrets of the Torah, with which they approached the mitzvahs. The way that the Zohar Kadosh praises the person who's serving Hashem. You find this again and again and again in the Zohar Kadosh. How fortunate is the person, right, who's learning Torah, who's davening properly, zakah. And you don't find that in the Gemara. The Gemara will just tell you, okay, you have to daven, you have to learn, But the Zohar Kadosh is the heart of it. It's that gewalt. Wow, what a privilege. Zakah man, the Isle of Anafik. Fortunate is a person who knows how to go into Avodas Hashem and come out safely and experience all the vicissitudes of life. Fortunate, zakah. Unbelievable, right? Praising us. Zakah. I'll call mitzvah v'avodah about everything, every mitzvah, every avodas Hashem. Ulehepech, and also the flip side of it. The Zohar Kadosh is not telling you, this is what you got to do and this is what you can't do. And if you don't do it, X, Y, Z, Z. Oh my gosh, I said Z. I've been living here for way too long, people. Z, X, Y, Z. And telling you that, you're going to have Gehenna and everything. No. The Zohar Kadosh doesn't say that. The Zohar Kadosh the Zohar Kadosh only knows how to cry out. It's like, Vaile neshmase. Can't you hear your neshama crying? It's not a matter of Gehenna. It's right now your soul. Vaile. Woe is to a person who's not connected in this way. Alasar me'avodas Hashem. Vai. Wow. You read words like this, it's ma'oyer the leiv. It inspires the heart. These teachings and these words, these terminologies, they inspire a person a tremendous amount to come closer and closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to come closer and closer to serving God. The next teaching is very connected. Sichos HaRan Kuf Tes. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Kidesh Kol Kachas Lashon HaTargum. Rabbi Shimon, by revealing the secrets of Torah that he revealed in Lashon HaTargum, which is in Aramaic, he sanctified the language to such an extent now, if you read anything in Aramaic, and there were tzaddikim who continue to write in Aramaic throughout, right? For example, the Ramchal has Tikkunim Chadashim that he wrote in Aramaic. There are it became part of our tradition that there's something particularly evocative about Targum. Something, I don't know, it does something to you. And that comes because the Zohar is written in Targum, and when Targum was used to transmit those secrets, gewalt. So then it sanctified the language. Now this is true on a simple level, like I just explained it, but it's also true in a much, much deeper level, and we're going to do this briefly now. I think I probably must have mentioned this in some context earlier on in the series, but let's do this very quickly. For those who learn Tanya, so you'll be familiar with this, is a very basic construct in Tanya, first couple of prakim. But very basically, Yecheskel Hanavi, who sees the vision of the Merkava, sees what's referred to by the later tzaddikim, the Mekubalim, as Shalosh Kelipas Legamri. He sees three shells, three external forces that conceal the presence and also protect, but also conceal the presence of the divine. Those three are the Anan Gadol. He sees a big cloud. He sees a Eish Mislakachas, a very fiery flame, a torch, and he sees a Ruach Sa'ara. He sees like a storm wind. These are called in the Mekubalim the Shalosh Klipas, the three shells, Hatmeis Legamri, that are absolutely impure. Then he sees what's called a Nogah, a glow, which we're going to get back to in a minute. And then inside the Nogah, he sees something called Chashmal. Chashmal, which today means electricity, in modern Hebrew. But Chashmal, that's pure Kedusha. That's pure pulsating divine energy. So we have on the one hand Chashmal, right? I just said on the right hand, right? Chashmal. That's on the one hand. That's the Indian of Chesed, the Indian of the revelation of Hashem, and that's total kedusha. And then on the other hand, you have the Shalosh Kelipas Hatmeis Legamri that are grouped as one. These three totally impure shells, and then you have something called the Nogah, the glow. And the tzaddikim explains already in the Zohar Kadosh that Nogah is the place of the Eitz Hadas Toivera. The Nogah is not quite totally impure, but it's not quite totally holy. It is in the middle. It's in the middle. And we have the capacity through our actions to either drag that Nogah down, chas v'shalom, into the place of total Tumah, or to elevate it into the place of total Kedusha. And so the Baal HaTanya, just making this much more straightforward, even though this is the underpinning of it, but the Baal HaTanya explains that essentially the whole Torah and its commandments are split into three categories. You have on the one hand the mitzvahs aseh. So the mitzvahs aseh, mitzvahs, a person eats matzah on Pesach, a person shakes the lulav, a person puts on tefillin, a person lights Shabbos candles, a person. These are positive actions that are drawing on and connected to chashmal, right? That's totally holy. That's absolutely kadosh. On the other hand, you have mitzvahs lois aseh, right? Things that are not to be done, eating not kosher animals, right? Looking where we're not supposed to look, improper relationships, etc., etc., etc. We have those things are absolutely negative, absolutely bound up with the opposite of the revelation of God, namely the concealment of God, or the magnification of ego, which Hainoach is the concealment of Hashem's presence, because that's what it's all about. But then, says the Baal HaTanya, then you have the realm of the mutter, which is the realm of the permissible. Now, the realm of the permissible is not quite tameh, right? Because it's not like you're allowed to do it. It's mutter, but it's not quite a mitzvah either. Not a positive commandment to eat a donut. Okay, maybe on Hanukkah we could talk about it. There's a whole long sugyas about the sufganiyot on Hanukkah. But generally speaking, eat a chocolate chip muffin or cookie. Not a mitzvah. It's not an aveira. It's not a mitzvah. But says the Baal HaTanya, you know something? It could be a mitzvah, and it could be an aveira. Because this is the realm of the Nogah, which is absolutely, utterly dependent on what our intention is. Are we eating this thing because stam, we're not even hungry, but it's just a physical gratification? When I'm feeling inside of me, the craving for something, is my neshama craving for holiness, is craving for chesed, not to take but to give, and to the extent that I think that voice inside of me is that I need to eat another muffin instead of helping somebody else, it's absolutely not going to give my neshama what it's looking for. Is it the magnification of my own physical gratification, my own ego, my own power together? In that sense, I took this cupcake and mamash pulled it down into the realm of Tumah. But if a person is about to go learn, and they're feeling a little bit weak, they're feeling a little bit, or even their mood is a little bit dipping, and they need a kick, they need a boost, sometimes you need some sugar in the system. And with the intention of doing that, like I'm about to go and learn, I want to be able to learn strong. Or I'm not feeling so happy and I want to cheer myself up, not stam, but because gewalt, because I know that simcha is the most important thing. But it's all for Hashem. It's all for Hashem. So then you literally just turn this thing into the biggest mitzvah in the world. This idea changed my life. It changed my life. I was 17 years old. I'll never forget it. So I didn't actually learn this in Chabad Svarim until later, but I learned it in Breslov first. And it was, I can't remember, it was some collection of small Breslov teachings right in the beginning of me getting into it. And it was around Hanukkah time. I've told this story before. And I was sitting on that couch over there in the Chatzar of what was then Yeshivas Shari Tivuna, where I went, which is now part of the Mir. And I was sitting there in the middle of Bein Starim, sweatpants, just hanging out. And I was eating a donut. And eating a donut, I was looking through this pamphlet of teachings. And I encountered this idea. And it was shocking. You know why? Because I was literally in the middle of eating a donut. And from one bite to the next, I went from doing an aveira to doing a mitzvah. And it blew my mind. It blew my mind. It blew my mind. Because I said, how sweet is Yiddishkeit? Like I'm eating this donut. Like I don't have to now run inside and put on a button-down shirt and get back to the Gemara. Like I'm serving Hashem and I'm chilling and it's great and it's so sweet and it's beautiful and it's life and it's normal and it's healthy and wonderful and it's nothing other than what I'm already doing. That was what it was. You hear? It was so mind-blowing to me. And I stopped and I had intention and I ate the next bite and I never had a sweeter donut bite in my life, Because it was dveikus. It became a shtick dveikus. And a minute ago it wasn't. You know why? Because it was Nogah. It was Nogah. And it all depended on what my consciousness was while eating this donut. Changed my whole life. That was a little bit the beginning. That was like an open to Pesach. And then And then I said, wow, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. Like I'm looking for a Yiddishkeit that's warm and that's sweet, and that's really effective. It can really change me. It can really change my life. It can really change my life. So why am I mentioning all this now? It's all important to know. Why am I mentioning it now? Because this threefold categorical structure, right, where we have the Shalosh Kelipas Nogah, right, as one element, right, that's totally impure. We have Chashmal, which is totally pure, that's another element. And then we have the in-between stage, Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. It can go either way, right? It's a little bit holy, it's a little bit not holy, and it's up to us to see how we're going to engage with it. Applies across every single structure of existence, because it's literally the framework, or a very important framework, in the blueprint for reality. And so that means that all throughout the realms of Olam, Shana, and Nefesh, space, time, the human soul, you're going to find these three categories all over. For example, and again, I've said this many times in the past, but it's good to review, in the realm and the structure of time. So you're going to say, okay, there's got to be these three things in the realm of time. What are they? So let's do this very quickly. Chashmal is obviously Shabbos, let's say, right? From the standpoint of a week, the unit of a week. Shabbos is Chashmal. Shabbos is Emunah. Shabbos is the Yom Nishmasa. It's the day of the soul. It's the day of Hashem. Shabbos is the name of Hashem. Shabbos is godly. That's Shabbos. Okay, so if Shabbos is Chashmal, so what's the three Kelipas Nogah, the three completely impure shells? So that's the 6 days of the week, which is completely mundane. Now, between the 6 days of the week and Shabbos, there has to be a Nogah, or there has to be a liminal intermediate space, and that's going to be Erev Shabbos, right? Or really more specifically, Bein Hashmashos, right? Where we are Mekadesh Shabbos, we bring Shabbos in early, and it's really the weekday. Shabbos didn't start yet. But we have, because it's Nogah, you have the capacity to transform the week into Shabbos. You can't do that on Thursday. You can't do that because it's not Kelipas Nogah. But on Friday, right, at that time, after Plaga Mincha, whatever it is, whatever halachically, it can make an early Shabbos until that time, it can be elevated. The same is true, let's say, in the realm of space. So on the one hand, you have Eretz Yisrael, which is Chashmal. That's absolutely holy. You have the other artzos, of the 70 nations of the world, which are chal. Even though La'asad Lava, when Mashiach comes, Yerushalayim is going to be everywhere, right? Everything's going to be Eretz Yisrael. The whole earth is going to be saturated with the energy of Eretz Yisrael. So that's very, very special. But now the whole world is chal. Eretz Yisrael is chashmal, is kadosh. What then is Nogah? So the Sfarim say the Kelipas Nogah, that glowing husk, that glowing shell, as it relates to the realm of space or geography, is Aver HaYarden. Right? Is that place, or the Yarden, which could either be seen as outside of Eretz Yisrael, or it can be seen as having Kedushas Eretz Yisrael, depending on where you draw the border. Right? The Yarden is a part, or is it not part of Eretz Yisrael? And so that's in geography. Now, to our point, Rabbi Nachman says in Torah, I believe it's, I want to say Yud Tes. Don't hold me to it. I have to look it up inside, but I think it's Yud Tes. The Rebbe says the same thing applies to language. So the chashmal of language is Lashon HaKodesh. It's Hebrew. It's the letters that God used to create the world. It's the code for existence. That's chashmal. The Shalosh Kelipas Nogah of language is going to be the languages of the Umas Ha'olam, the nations of the world. So here we come to our point. What then is going to be the language of Nogah, right? What's going to be with this energy of Nogah? Says Rabbi Nachman, Targum, Aramaic. Now, Targum could either be seen as it's a Babylonian language, it has nothing to do with holiness, and you can use it to say whatever you like. It's nothing to do with Kedusha. But Targum could be sanctified in the same way that the Yarden could be sanctified, in the same way that Bein Hashmashos could be sanctified, in the same way that everything Mutter could be sanctified. And once it's sanctified, it's mamash kedusha. That's just a little bit of background to what Rabbi Nachman is saying here. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai kidesh kol kachas lashon hatargum. He's so elevated Nogah, right, in language, which is Aramaic, to the point that it's completely sanctified now. Why is this really important? Because everybody wants to know, what did the Baal Shem Tov bring to the world, right? What's unique about the Baal Shem Tov's teaching? What did he come to add? An HaRan at the sort of the end of history. So what's unique about the teachings of the Baal Shem? And the answer, there are many answers, but one of the answers that's particularly powerful, especially with his background and knowledge, is that the Baal Shem Tov came to focus on the realm of Nogah. Mitzvahs were always mitzvahs. Averis were always Averis. But the Baal Shem Tov's genius and the Baal Shem Tov's vision and his revelation in the world is Bechol Drachecha Da'ehu. You can encounter God everywhere. There is no such thing anymore that serving Hashem is in the synagogue, that serving Hashem is in the Beis Medrash, that serving Hashem is in yeshiva, and then never you have to go to work and your whole life falls apart. There's no such thing. Finished. We're done with that. We're done with that, or at least those of us who are connected to the Baal Shem are done with that. Most of Klal Yisrael is not done with that yet. And what can you do? You have to drag them into the light. But to those of us who have a connection to the Baal Shem Tov, what kind of business is that you need to write a sefer called Ben Torah for life, just in case, just so that there should be some desperate last-ditch attempt at making sure that somebody feels still connected to Hashem. The only heichatim so they could find to do that is to tell even when you leave yeshiva, no, you're still in yeshiva. Heichatesi. What do you mean still in yeshiva? Be a human being. You have to leave yeshiva, go to work. That means that you're not connected to Hashem? Adarabba. The ikr dveikus in Hashem, in a certain sense, from the standpoint of bitachon, from the standpoint of midas, from the standpoint of holding on to divine consciousness and being a light in the world, go to work. Like, what are you talking about? Okay, there was always a Shevet Levi. It's a different conversation. But this hashkafa, that the only way that you can connect to Hashem is through learning, is puzzle treif. It makes no sense. That's what God meant when He came down on Har Sinai and gave the 10 Commandments, that everybody should sit in front of a Gemara their whole life, and if you dare to deviate for 1 second to take a snack or to take a break or to play on the floor with your kids or to hang out with your wife or to do something normal and human, that's some kind of deviation. Hasmila haskir. Eich ze efshar. Hashem gave us a Torah to reveal the light of Emunah. The light of Emunah is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere, in every circumstance, in everything. Now it's hidden, it's in potential. So the Baal Shem Tov came to give us the consciousness. You could find Hashem in everything. In everything. That's the messianic consciousness, the revelation of monotheism. Because all the while that you think that God is here and not there, then Hashem is not Echad. Hashem is not Echad. Because that means that in some places He's Hashem, in other places He's not Hashem. As we get closer and closer to the coming of Mashiach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent out the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent our Rabbi Nachman Sichos Yagan Aleinu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent down the tzaddikim who are here to help us begin to expand our consciousness, likras melech HaMashiach, to begin to get ready for the revelation of Umala ha'aretz deas Hashem kamayim li'amachasim. The whole world will be saturated with the knowledge of God like water covers the ocean bed. It doesn't say every shul or every Beis Medrash. It says the whole world and everything in it and every person in it and every circumstance in it and every experience in it, everything. Everything. This is the light of the Baal Shem Tov. Now, where did the Baal Shem Tov get this light from? Because it didn't happen in a vacuum. The Baal Shem Tov is an extension of the revelations of the Arizal. Very plain and simple. Plain and simple. Right? The Arizal system basically teaches that everything that is emerged from spiritual light, emerged from the divine, emanating of Himself in layer after layer after layer after layer after layer. And where did the Arizal get this consciousness from? Well, the Arizal is just a more technical and more revealed rendering of the ideas that are already communicated in the Zohar HaKadosh. And so now we understand, go back to the piece, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Kidesh es Lashon HaTargum. Right, meaning he had to use Aramaic because the whole revelation of the Zohar that's reflected in the teachings of the Ari, that's reflected in the teachings of the Baal Shem, that's later reflected in the teachings even deeper in Rabbi Nachman, is all Targum. It's all Targum. Because the whole thing is teaching us how to approach the Kelipas Nogah of life and to find Hashem in it as we get closer to Mashiach. Lashon Targum. So that even things that are not overtly spiritual, that are Targum, that are mamish Kelipas Nogah, at that point, you can find Hashem everywhere. You can find Hashem everywhere. This is what the Baal Shem Tov brought to the world, not streimels and not bekishes, as wonderful or not wonderful as those things may be. It's up to your personal opinion. I don't personally love them, but it's up to you to decide. That's fine. But that's not what the Baal Shem Tov brought to the world. Not black stockings or white stockings or how long your payas are or how long your gartel is or how long. This is chitzonius, the chitzonius, the chitzonius. I've been speaking about this very strongly lately because I feel strongly about it. And I think it's true. And if it's true, I'm going to say it. I don't care if it's popular or not. I don't care if people like me or love me or hate me because of it. I say it because this is the emes. This is what the Baal Shem Tov brought to the world. Period. Period. Now, if you want the external strappings of this thing called the institution of Chassidus, matov v'manayim, I've in the past recommended, especially to unmarried Talmidim, Bachrim, not to adopt the strappings of Chassidus. Not, especially before they're married. Why should they do that to themselves? Why should they limit now their the range that now people in the world, with their lack of understanding of what this neo-Chassidic, let's say, what this new, real resurgence of Chassidus is, that now they should think that, oh, this person's they don't know what it is and what it is, and why should you do that to yourself? But more than that, forget about shidduchim for a second. The reason why I tell them not to is because today, even the slightest movement chitzonius, in some way, can, not always, but it can take away from the Penimiyus. It can take away from what it's really all about. And a person starts getting into Chassidus, and then they're lit up with the teachings, and they're starting to do the avodas, and then they're going to start to put on a gartel. A little bit, you just dragged yourself externally. Why do that? Why do that? Let's bring back the Baal Shem Tov's Chassidus of the heart, of the heart, of the heart. No one needs to know about it. You don't need to show people. You don't need to now put on tcheles and this and grow your payas out and your beard. Not. Remember the Doughnut story. Keep doing what you were already doing. Just do it differently. You don't need a Chassidishe Doughnut now. Carry on with your Doughnut, but do it with your heart. And then gewalt, it's a Chassidishe Doughnut, like you never saw a Doughnut like this. It's mamish, Maybe one day we'll have a Chassidus, we'll serve donuts instead of kugel, It's mamish, like it doesn't need to be kugel, it doesn't need to be dafka gefilte vish, it doesn't even need to be dafka with your hands, believe it or not. I can even use a fork. Even, whatever, now I'm just making jokes. But gewalt, it's gotta be with your heart. It's got to be with the heart. This is what the Baal Shem Tov brought to the world. And it was forgotten. And Rabbi Nachman wanted to bring it back. And now even in Breslov it's forgotten. And even in Chabad it's forgotten. And even in other places, it's forgotten. Nishtakcha. People have forgotten what it was really about. What it was really about. It was about Kiddush HaTargum. It was about Aliyas HaNogah. That's what it was about. It was about Mashiach. It was literally about getting us ready for the Messianic age, for the Messianic era. Okay, so that's a tiny sicha with a very lengthy explanation. Now let's take a look. For the last few minutes, let's take a look at this teaching from the Chida. So first he brings from the Ramchal, Sefer Derech Etz Chaim. In the book that I mentioned earlier, I write a lot from the Ramchal, which again, people don't know anything. They mamish don't know. They think the Ramchal wrote Mesilas Yesharim and he must have been a big Lithuanian Talmud scholar. They don't know what the Ramchal was all about. They don't know his hashkafa was so radically Penimiyus oriented. It was unbelievable. He wrote Mesilas Yesharim at the end of his life as a way to get his message in, it's sort of like a Trojan horse into the yeshivas, which is a very fascinating study. There's a very good doctoral dissertation that was written by somebody on the topic, Ayin Sham. But the Ramchal was like, he would go crazy if they saw the way people are learning today. He would go crazy. He would mamish go crazy. We're forsaking the soul of Torah. And then we wonder why everything's falling apart, He would mamish, I don't know what he would say, what he would do. He would be very sad. So in Sefer Derech Etz Chaim, the Ramchal says, V'hu raya miSefer HaZohar, sha'afal pi she'eina meven alashan mesugel neshama. So he begins, even if a person does not understand the words of the Zohar Kadosh, makes no difference. Read it. It's online. You can do 2 minutes a day. Read the Zohar Kadosh. I try to have a Seder in Zohar. have a Seder in Zohar. You read it. He says, see also in the name, or B'Shem HaGedolim is a sefer, right, by the Chida. And he writes over there, he says there was a certain masculine, I'm not sure if he's referring, I don't know whether he's referring to like the maskilim. He lived around that same time, a little bit before the maskilim, maybe the early maskilim, but he lived in a completely different continent, but at the same time he was always traveling. The Chida traveled all over the place. So I don't know exactly whether he's speaking about like a maskil, like the early secular Jewish intellectuals who began the reform and conservative movements later on, or he's just saying like a wise person asked him this question. I don't know. But he says, that the students of the Arizal, the lion cubs of the lion of the Arizal, wrote that learning Zohar Kadosh, even if you don't understand it, is a tremendous fixing for the soul, to enlighten and inspire the soul, and to infuse our lives with holiness. And the Arizal would give people a tikkun to the Baal Tshuva, learn 5 pages of Torah every day. Even if you don't know what it says, the Kriyasa Zu Hilula. Reading it is, I'm not sure, Hilula maybe, it's without Nakudas, I'm not sure. Lahayra nefesh l'sakna. And that alone is enough to enlighten and inspire the soul and to rectify the soul. And it appears from the context that he was speaking about the Zohar. More so than Mishnayos and Gemara and Chumash and Tanakh, which is the overwhelming majority of what people spend the overwhelming majority of their time on. And even that is being generous. Right? All of their time on. Right? The overwhelming majority of people. They'll never make it. They'll never make it to Penimiyus HaTorah. V'hu pele. See, he asked, "B'ma koichei gadol mikol haTorah?" And this was the question. It's like, how do you understand this? Why is the Zohar any more, rectifying for the soul than any other area of Torah? And the Chassidus says, I answered him. Every aspect of Torah, you remember like we said before, a person learns Zohar, you're going to get cheshek to want to learn everything. Sure, there's holiness in every aspect of Torah without a question, ubefrat im yilishma, and specifically if a person learns it lishma, which can mean many things, but from the Baal Shem Tov for Dveikus, to be connected to Hashem, ba'amitas, in a real way, without a question, it's fixing all the worlds and it's uniting Kuchabrichu Shchinte and revealing godliness in the world, for sure. But even, and it's obviously true, like we write in the book also, obviously, that even the people who are drawn toward Penimiyus and are learning Kabbalah, of course they have to still learn Gemara and Halacha, and you can't have the soul without the body. You can't either have the body without the soul, but you can't have the soul without the body. So for sure, right? Like the Arizal himself, everybody knows that Ari was a big Talmud Chacham, he wasn't Stam a mystic. So of course you need both. However, Asher Gadol Liman, what's unique and what's incredibly powerful and great about this particular study, the Torah in Nigle, which is in the Psukim, in the Mishnayos, in the Gemara, in the Halachic Midrashim, and so on, the light is very, very covered over. Hashem's presence is covered over there, even though it's all filled with Hashem's presence, because these are His mitzvahs and the study of the halachic parameters, and it's absolutely filled with Hashem's presence, of course. But it's hidden, and you don't necessarily feel that. So you can sit down and learn Cheskas Abatim and Shnai Ma'achsim Batalis for 10 hours straight, and you could not really feel Hashem or not think about Hashem, and you're wrapped up into the Talmudic dialectics and the details and that's wonderful, and of course that's Dveikus and everything beautiful. But is that gonna make you want to change your life? It's difficult. It's difficult to say that. Even the Gemara in Kiddushin that says, which we learned a little bit last week about it, right? That a person should, if the Yetzirah is attacking a person, drag him to the Beis Medrash. We learned a different interpretation of that last week. Or later on in that Gemara over there, I barasi Yetzer Hara, Hashem says, I created the Yetzer barasi Torah Tavlin, and I created the Torah as an antidote. If you look in the Mishnah Berurah, the Mishnah Berurah quotes this Gemara, and he says, barasi Yetzer Hara, I created the Yetzer Hara, barasi Torah Tavlin, I created the Torah, says the Mishnah Berurah. What kind of Torah? So nobody seems to like think in this way, He says, Agada. Agada is so important, this Mishnah Berurah, because it's like, it undoes like every shmooze you ever heard from every Rosh Hashiva about how the Yitzhar is so strong, you gotta stick your nose in the Gemara again. That's not what the Gemara in Kedushin is saying. There is Agada, and it's called Agada because it's Nogah Delev. It draws the heart. There's something about learning Agada, which is just a broad cover for all Penimiyus HaTorah, like the Gra writes, and in Shlema, different places, Kalatar, that Agada includes all of the secrets of the Torah. Agada, that's what does it. That's what brings Hashem into your life. It's just not the subject, of Hashem. If you're learning halacha, it's not the subject. The subject is the mitzvahs. But Agada, it does something to a person. That's the Ma'or Sheba. That's the light in the Torah. That's Machzir Balamuta that brings a person back to Hashem. See, he says, sure, there's holiness in Mishnah, in Gemara, in everything. But it's melubashim ma'od, it's very concealed. Ve'ein nikar behem hasoid klal, and you don't see the soid. What's the soid? It's soid Hashem. Liyareya, like it's the secret of Hashem's presence. It's the secret of Yira Shamayim. Yira letters Re'iyah, seeing, awareness, awe. Right? Awareness. Ve'ein nikar behem hasoid klal. You don't see that in the Gemara. But this is not the case for the Soid HaTorah, Beferish, Ve'ein Pesi HaKoirei, Shalo Yavin Derech Klal Kidvar Ba'amke Razei HaTorah. Even the most foolish person who's reading and doesn't even know what they're reading. If you know a little bit Aramaic, you have to know a little bit. Otherwise, Mama's not going to know anything. So you may as well read this Japanese. And I'm sure there's still something holy even then. But of course, a person tries with some way to understand the words. You can find a translation or something, even if you don't understand it to the utmost. But you feel something there. You feel something. Even if you feel that it's way beyond you, but at least you felt something. At least you felt humble. At least wow, the Torah is so deep, I didn't know. And that's why when the Sisrei Torah are being studied in their revealed aspect, which is in the hidden areas of Torah, the Zohar Kadosh, Agada Bechlal, and any teaching that's drawing on the wellsprings of the Zohar, on the wellsprings of the Ari, on the wellsprings of the Baal Shem, on the wellsprings of Rabbi Nachman, all of them. So they, like the Zohar means a shine, right? The Ramchal writes in Adab Amarim that the place you see the root, if you imagine a Chazal, Zohar Minat Torah Minayin, right? Where do you find a hint of the Zohar in the Torah? He says it's in the word Zohar Tasala Teva. The Zohar that was hung by Noach, or either it's a window, Yeshem Evan Toiv, Yeshem Chaloin, whether it was a window, whether it was a shining stone, that's the Zohar, is shining light. Mazhirinu mi'irin hanefesh. It illuminates the soul. The afal gav, even though in a certain sense the words are concealed, you don't know what it's saying at all. Hainu lahavin sisrei elyon, to really understand the deepest secrets ba'otzem in its utmost intensity, and to really come to understand what the Zohar is saying. You have to learn it from someone who's teaching it to you, right? And gadol, right? When a person has ears that are accepting from someone, so then you can understand it. But it makes no difference. Even if you don't have that, you open up the text, Nikar Yutan Razin Ilain. Hayosan, right? It is revealed that Hayosan Razin Ilain. These are secrets here. This is from Shemayim in a different way. And it makes an impact on your soul. Even if you don't know, your soul knows. Like Rabbi Nachman said, Sipuri Maisias, his stories, even if you cannot find any meaning in them, just read them and they do something to your neshama. Even if you don't understand at all, they'll move you to tears and you don't even know why. You won't even know why, but they'll move you to tears. Because they're Sipurei Maisius Mishanim Kadmoinius. They're called Sipurei Maisius. They're story tales from ancient days, which is a reference to what's called Atik Yoimin. It's the highest spiritual realm. And it triggers your soul in like the deepest way, like in an inexplicable, unexplainable way. Sipurei Maisius. Even if you don't understand, it's not all about understanding. The yeshiva world will have you believe that like, you have to understand. You don't have to understand. You don't have to understand. The main thing is not understanding. The main thing is feeling. Now, in order to feel, you have to understand to a certain extent. But the understanding should bring you to a place where you stand in awe of how little you understood it. That's the point of learning Torah. To the extent that a person learns and thinks that now they learned, they understood, says the Ma'arinayim explicitly, I'm forgetting exactly where, but it's in Ma'arinayim. I gave it over on Shabbos afternoon, a couple of Shabbos ago to the shul. Says the Ma'arinayim, to the extent that you get up after learning, I said this last night also in shiur, and you think you understood, and now you're a big Talmid Chacham, says the Ma'arinayim, you did not learn. It's a counterintuitive thing. He says you did not learn. Because the whole point of learning Torah, the whole point of learning is that it should make you more humble, that it should make you understand, like Rabbi Nachman says in Sicha Gimel that we learned in the very beginning of the series, Tachlis Hayediyah, the pinnacle of knowledge is Asher Loi Neida, is to come to know that Gewalt, I'm just a human being, I'm so limited. The world is full of mysteries. I don't know anything. I'm Baruch Hashem for that. Because if I thought that I knew, then wow, this world is a really miserable place. But I don't know. It's all a mystery. So the Ma'arinayim says your learning should bring you to a place when you close the Gemara, you know less. Not because you understand, not because you know less. You sat and learned something for a half hour. But it opens your eyes in such a way where you say, there's so much more to learn. That's learning. That's learning. Is that and I ask you, again, not to be mekatrik, is that the energy we have in our yeshivas today? That people walk humbled by what they're learning? I'm going to leave that hanging out there as a rhetorical question. This is what Penimiyus is supposed to be. This is what Limud Penimiyus is supposed to be. Raz and Yilayin, mysteries. Mysteries. Okay, so we're going to leave it over there. I just want to learn the Chidah with you. These teachings from the Rebbe. Like this is life. This is clarity, das, messianic consciousness, emuna, anivus. Hashem gave us, Rabbi Nachman called himself an oitzer matnas chinam, an oitzer yirah shamayim. Hashem gave us a treasure house of yirah shamayim to help us live with real yirah shamayim, with awe. How grateful we have to be about it, and most importantly, like I sometimes encourage the Chaver here, do something about it. This is not a one-man show. I'm not out there trying to spread this message. Everyone who's touched by this message, spread it. Spread it. Whether you're going to share the shiurim, whether you're yourself going to take the teachings, find someone to learn with and give them over to them. It doesn't have to be me. This is not about me. I don't care if I'm not a part of it. As long as the whole world is lit up with the light of the Baal Shem, I'm the happiest person in the world. I don't care how they come to it. Fine, but you need to realize, each and every one of you, that you and I are not different. I just happen to be a person that, Baruch Hashem, I get to spend my whole time doing this. But all of you are me, meaning I am all of you. We're all people who are so grateful to have been exposed to these teachings. How could we keep it for ourselves? Find a way. Find a way to spread this. Find a way to do your part. It's going to be a collective effort on the part of the masses who have been enlightened by these teachings. They'll do their part. They'll reach more people. Those people will reach those people. It's going to be a mass movement on the level of the grassroots. We're not waiting for any Rav and Rosh Hashiva anymore. Every person needs to know what they need, and if you need it, rest assured others need it as well. And we have our tzaddikim, and we have our guides, and it's all in the Sfarim. Treasures upon treasures upon treasures, and what a tragedy that it's what everyone needs, and no one knows about it. What a tragedy. So we have to do our part. Baruch Hashem, the sun is rising, things are getting better and better, but you have to be a part of it. It's so important. So that's just a chizuk. And Hashem should bless us to continue to connect to these teachings, to continue to learn together as a chabura, and to continue to do our way, each one in our unique way, with our unique avodah, to find a way to bring these messages, this consciousness, this way of thinking, of living, of being into the world that's so desperately, desperately thirsting for a little bit of ar, for a little bit of light. And we'll give them a lot of light. Be'ezras Hashem.
שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי, מלך חי וקיים, על כל נשימה